Hello and welcome to It's All About You, the best show about you on the internet. I am B. Dave Walters, writer, life coach, talk radio host. This is episode number 82, and again, I'm not sure what I'm going to call it. Maybe persuasion, maybe getting people to listen to you. I don't know how many words I can fit in, but I guess again, you've seen it by now. You saw whatever came up on the screen. But what I want to talk to you today about is how to get people to listen to you. More importantly, how to get people to do what you want them to do, which is actually not very hard if you know. If you've spent any time talking with me, and if you haven't, you should hit me up. Hit me on Facebook, facebook.com/B Dave Walters. One of the things that I can do is I can basically tell you what people are going to do before they do it, honestly. In fact, I just had this experience today where I told somebody yesterday verbatim what somebody would say in a conversation, and then they went and they had it, and it happened. And people think it's like this amazing thing, and it's not really that amazing. It's just you just have to be paying attention. Because once you understand who someone is and how they are, then it is very, very easy to predict what they're going to do. And when you know who they are and how they are, and you can predict what they're going to do, then you can figure out what you need to do to steer it in the direction that you want. Does that make sense? So let me tell you what the question was. I have to look at my computer screen here. What the question was that sparked this in the first place. Again, you can ask me anything. You can submit questions through a website called FormSpring, form like membership form, spring like the season, .me, like me, /B Dave Walters. I answer every question that comes in. It might take some time, but I will answer every question that comes in. And I either do a video like this, or I talk about it on the radio show, or I write an article. And by the way, I've answered a ton of these on my radio show. So check the links to the previous shows and the topics. If you ask a question and you haven't seen a video or an article and you think I didn't answer, actually I probably have. I just talked about it on the air. So you can see the links to the radio shows. Actually, you can see links to everything I've done. The videos, articles, radio shows, everything on a website called about.me, like about.me /B Dave Walters. So check and see. I might have already answered your question. If I haven't answered it yet, I will. So here was the question. It seems that everyone is so stubborn in their beliefs, even when logic or experience proves them otherwise. With that said, how can I become a more persuasive speaker? If throwing facts, logic, and even past events at people don't work, then what will? Again. It seems that everyone is so stubborn in their beliefs, even when logic or experience proves them otherwise. With that said, how can I become a more persuasive speaker? If throwing facts, logic, and past events don't work, then what will? So first let me just stop you right there. Throwing anything at somebody is not at all the way to reach them. Throwing logic, facts, past experience at people in an attempt to get them to change is actually one of the worst ways to get people to change. Why do you think that is, by the way? I'm switching back over to my stopwatch here. I got this, I wish you could see it. I got like this giant cartoon stopwatch so I can kind of see it out of the corner of my eye so I don't talk too long. So why do you think it is that throwing logic and facts and, history at people has no impact on them at all? Because people's egos get in the way and cloud their mind. It's very difficult for most people to admit when they've been wrong about something, or when they made a mistake, or when they misjudged something. And it becomes much easier to actually just defend whatever you did, to defend the action, rather than admit it was the wrong move. Because this "I'm not good enough" kicks in, where it's like, well, if I admit I made a mistake, then I'm admitting something's wrong with me, and I just can't accept that, and so I just have to fight and cling and hold on to something that is obviously not true. Remember we talked before about that cognitive dissonance is what it's called? That when you hold two ideas in your mind and they can't both be true, your brain will go to these like great crazy lengths to try and rationalize them both. Like, I want chocolate cake makes me fat. So you start thinking, oh, well, it's just a little piece. Or, oh, well, I'll work out tomorrow. Or, well, I had a light dinner tonight. Oh, well, I didn't have breakfast. Oh, I'll work out more later in the week. See all those excuses kick in where you rationalize and just make it okay because you can't accept the fact that you just shouldn't eat the chocolate cake because you want to, right? So remember, as we've talked in the past, willpower will fail over the long term. 100% of the time, willpower will fail in the long term. Okay? So, honestly, the same way you persuade other people is really the same way that you persuade yourself once you understand this. And the key to doing it is this. You have to understand a very simple concept known as WIFM. WIFM. What's in it for me? WIFM. Okay? People don't actually care about you. They care about them. I know that seems like a mean thing to say, and like we live in this cruel, heartless world, but it's not that what I'm saying. But the fact is, everybody's always preoccupied with their own, baggage, trauma, and issues, and whatever's going on in their world. Remember, all human action is for two reasons, and two reasons only: to gain pleasure or avoid pain. That's it. That's why anybody does anything, to gain pleasure or avoid pain. And then sometimes you're like, well, I know I just do it because I should. I'm like, well, doing what you should feels good. That's why you do it. You're gaining pleasure. Right? Or I do it to serve God. Well, serving God feels good. That's why you do it. Or avoiding hell, which you think will feel bad. So you're both gaining pleasure and avoiding pain. It's what we all do. It's human. So when you have somebody, like again in my coaching work, when I talk to people, I can figure out in about 40 seconds for some people, 5 minutes for others, exactly what it is that they need to work on, and exactly what it is that their block is, and exactly where their block is and why. I know all these things almost immediately. The thing is, I learned very, very early, you can't actually tell them because it won't work. It will just bounce off. Like if you're like, you have an inability to commit in relationships because when you were growing up, your parents got a divorce and your father was never around. And so what you learned was men who love you leave, and therefore you can't establish intimate emotional relationships with men. That's the problem. If I just say that, it's like people's eyes kind of go blank, like they just short out like 60s robots. It's like they can't process it. They can't. For a couple of reasons. I mean, a lot of times everybody likes to believe that their situation is really unique. That they know I've heard it all, but what they're going through is truly different and truly nobody has ever encountered this before, which isn't true. All of our pain, everything, all of our pleasures too, everything that any of us have experienced, somebody has been through before. Somebody's been through something substantially similar, right? And sometimes even our attachment and connection to the pain and our attachment and connection to this idea of us as victim is too powerful to let go. Your self-image has adapted itself to being the victim, or being whatever, whatever you're trying to reach this person as. If you're having some sort of political disagreement, or if you're having some sort of religious disagreement, or whatever it is that it may be, people start to self-identify as that. And when you put forward anything that they perceive to be as an attack against that, then you get this negative pushback, right? Like the girl that gives the guy another chance. It's like he's cheated on you the last 5 times. You give him a 6th time. And you're like, he's going to cheat on you. And she's like, no, he won't. And then he cheats and you point that out. Then they get defensive and they defend the guy. Like you hear those stories about a man beating his wife and another man jumps in to pull the guy off of her. And she takes a gun or knife and shoots the dude that was trying to help. Right? Or guys that are beating their wives and the cops show up and the wife attacks the cops. When you hear those things. And this is why, basically, that their connection to that baggage and image is so great that they will cling to it even when it is harming them and even when it is conclusively proven not to work. Because people don't operate on logic. People operate on emotion and then they justify with logic. That's an old sales trick, by the way. People buy with emotion, justify with logic. You want it because you want it. You just want it. You want the chocolate cake. Then you justify the fact that, well, I'll work out more. I had a small lunch. All the things I said before. You walk in, you see the new car. You want the car. Then you justify, well, I do have 130,000 miles on the old one, and I probably could lease it for pretty cheap. You see what I mean? So, if you want people to do what you want them to do, well, first, figure out what's in it for them. Always. There's always a stronger drive for people to do something that is in their own best interest than something that is not in their own best interest. Or not even in their best interest. I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. But something that feels good for whatever reason. If they get to end up feeling good afterwards, then they'll do it. Right? Now, sometimes you'll see people in situations where they can be manipulated by guilt, and you think it's like actually making them feel bad is what gets them to do what you want them to do. But this is where it actually gets kind of tricky, because if they grew up in a background that they had like a very strict upbringing or a very strict religious upbringing, and a lot of guilt and worthlessness was piled onto them, then their self-image adapts to the idea that they are worthless. And whenever they're exposed to ideas that make them feel worthless, something in them resonates with that. So on a certain level, it still feels good, even though it feels bad on the surface. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense, but it's psychology. People do it all the time, right? You resonate in line with what you're accustomed to. You resonate in line with what you expect, okay? So when you're trying to reach people and persuade them, again, and if you know in your mind what's in it for them, the best thing to do, honestly, is just listen. First, start off by listening. Listening is very rare. People don't do it anymore. In fact, this is an experiment that I've been doing with my students for a little while now, and it actually works really well. In fact, we can do it right here. It's not quite as powerful with you watching this video as it is with another human being, so I suggest you try it with another human being. But really, it's this. All you have to do is make eye contact. That's it. Don't laugh. Don't say anything. Just sit and make eye contact with them for a few seconds. Like, here, let's do it. Just look me in the eye. That's all you have to do. It's not so easy, is it? It's not. And again, it's much harder with another human being. Now, I'm not saying a staring contest where you're like, no. But just be there and be present to another human being. It is surprisingly difficult and surprisingly uncomfortable. Yeah, because we're not used to it anymore. Things like technology and the internet, I mean, this is great that this video in the internet has made it possible for you and I to connect with one another and have this conversation. But even though it's connected people around the world, it's driven a wedge between people at the same table. Like next time you go to a restaurant, watch, you'll see families sitting around tables and all of them have their phones out like texting people and stuff. And it's actually kind of sad. It's actually kind of sad. So first thing is start listening to what it is they're saying and actually hear what they're saying. Hear what they're saying and not what you think they are saying, okay? Because what people say and their body language and how they say it will literally tell you everything. And quite often you'll find out more just by paying attention to how something's said than the words itself. I mean, remember, body language is 55% of communication. Tonality, how you say something, is 38%, and the words are only about 7% of communication. Right? So they're important, but not really that important. It's like, as I've given this example before, if you flip through the channels and you turn on the Spanish station or the Korean station or, the Armenian station or some language you don't speak and watch, you'll have an idea what they're talking about. You will. You'll be like, well, she's mad at him over something. They're in love. I don't know what he did, but, she's mad at him. Right? And this is why. Body language, tonality. So pay attention to what people are saying and what's coming across in between the words, okay? And then ask questions. Questions. Remember how I said I can't just tell somebody what's wrong with them because it will have I don't mean what's wrong with them. You know I don't mean what's wrong with them. But I can't tell them where their blockages are because they won't hear me. I have to get them to discover for themselves where their blockages are. They have to say it. And the way to do this is through questioning. Okay? Now again, I don't mean grilling, I don't mean interrogating, right? But if it's like a situation like, just today, I had somebody that was telling me that they didn't think their fiance was really the man they wanted to marry. It just so happens, I've seen the guy and listened and been observing, and he's not the guy that she wants to marry. I knew this already, but I couldn't tell her that because she wouldn't have believed me. But when she brought up the fact that she's like, I'm not too sure, I'm like, no, he's not. And she's like, well, how do you know? And I was like, well, just a couple things off the top of my head. You refer to him as your boyfriend, not your fiance. You don't ever really seem excited when you talk about him. You don't smile when you think about him. You don't, I gave her a whole shopping list of things, right? But it was only after she became present to the fact that maybe he's not the one that I could kind of start to say some of these things. And I even pointed out, I was like, you've been together for years now. They've been together like 5-6 years. Still engaged, not married. And I'm like, after 6 years, what is it that you're waiting to see? You know what you know. I mean, you know who and what he is. He knows who and what you are, and you either do or do not want to spend the rest of your life with this person. You don't really have to overcomplicate it more than that, because the answer is pretty much yes or no. You know, all the drama and baggage and all this other stuff kicks in, and you're like, ooh, I'm not sure, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you do know. You do know. You know. You just don't want to admit it. The confusion is the illusion. You know, you might not want to hurt his feelings. You might not want to deal with the baggage of breaking up. You might not want to have to worry about splitting up your stuff and moving out and dealing with all these headaches. All of those things might be true, but deep down inside in your heart, you know whether or not it's over, right? Now, again, to keep this, because I've kind of been all over with this one, to keep this in the idea of getting people to do what you want them to do, when you start asking questions, you can kind of lead them in the direction that you want them to go, right? Because what you want is them to be saying yes. You want as many questions as possible where the answer is yes, okay? When you want them to agree with you. If not, you can still kind of point out to them through questioning when things are going wrong, right? Like if you're getting into like religious debates with people, but that I do not recommend. I've been into way too many of them, and I'm actually undefeated, might I add. But the way I do it is I basically just like keep putting in front of them the things they say that don't make sense. And I have to say I've been put in a position lately on like Facebook and stuff where I have to ignore so many things that people write that just are like crazy. I'm just like crazy. And I believe some pretty fringe things if you know me. I believe some things that, you know, most people would probably believe are crazy. But I saw something like somebody wrote that, I don't know if you saw where, like a week or two ago, Obama was in Russia and his mic was still on and he didn't know his mic was on, and he was talking to the Russian Prime Minister and he told him how he'd have more room to discuss missile defense after the election. And he was like, after the election. And somebody wrote this like entire article and put it up on Facebook about how CIA time travelers, hand to God, this is what they wrote. CIA time travelers had come back and told Obama that he was going to win the election. Seriously. I'm like, really? Really? CIA time travelers? Really? That's what they would do with, you know, the limitless resources and the ability to bounce across time. That's what they do. You really think so? Or maybe he just thinks he's going to win in the fall and he knows he doesn't want to make any big political moves until then. Always remember a little something, because I'm almost out of time. Always remember a little something called Occam's razor. The simplest solution is often the best. You know, the simplest solution is often the right one. Okay? You know, I believe in aliens, ghosts, all this other stuff. But the fact of the matter is, when you see a light in the sky and you don't know what it is, it's probably an airplane. If it's not an airplane, it's probably a helicopter. Overwhelmingly majority, that is probably what it is. Okay? If you hear something go bump in the night, it's probably not a restless spirit in your house. It probably really is the house settling. Or you've got mice. Okay? So, again, I know I've been all over the place. And unfortunately, part of this idea about knowing how to get people to do what you want them to do kind of helps you you need to be a student of people. But when you understand what their motivation is and what it is that they want and what it is they're trying to accomplish, if you show them a way where they can get it by doing what you want them to do, then you'll have it. Just remember, everybody does everything to gain pleasure or avoid pain. Absolutely everybody, absolutely all the time. Okay? So, about out of time. Keeping this one just slightly short, because when I don't give myself enough time on the stopwatch, which is about to go off, I tend to run over. So hey, like always, thank you for watching this episode. I know it's been a while since I did one, but I'm going to try and get them going more consistently. I know I've said that before, but I'm committing to you to do it. It's been a good year so far. I'm working out twice a day. You can't see because I'm all from here up, but I'm looking pretty sexy now, bringing sexy back. You are great. I love you. Find me, Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, YouTube, everything at /B Dave Walters or on about.me /B Dave Walters. Check out those radio shows, see if I answered your question, check out the videos, or ask me a new one. You're great, and I love you. All right, have a fantastic week. Bye.